Welcome to Ponchatoula Live, a special edition of the Ponchatoula Live show. I'm your host, Parker Layrisson, and today is special because we have with us the state champion coach of the Ponchatoula Green Wave. You can see here, I'm wearing my gear. Of course, the whole town is incredibly happy that we just won our first ever boys basketball state championship. Coach Taylor, that I'm going to bring on here in a moment, is somebody I really admire because I know he's not only a great coach who's brought our team to, heights we've never achieved before, but he's just a great guy, great dad. I see him playing tennis with his daughters at JC Park and supporting his, son and the rest of his family, and just a great guy. So, and of course, I hear a lot about him through the many parents of players on his team, like my good friend Marshall Graves, who's been on the show, or my pal Corey Jackson that I coached long ago. So you just hear lots of great things about Coach Tom Taylor. Coach, welcome to the show. Hey,
Parker. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you for being here. Why don't we kick things off with you just telling us a little bit about yourself?
It's kind of tough for me to talk about myself because I like to talk about the other people that I know, but I'll give it my best shot. Not originally from Ponchatoula. Grew up in Monroe, Louisiana. Went to school, Ouachita Christian, little small private school in Monroe. Played basketball there. And then grew up on the bayou doing a little fishing, little alligator action in Monroe. And then went to Millsaps my first year of college, and then came down here to Southeastern in 2000.
Okay. So what was the connection to Southeastern? How did you make it to Hammond?
I followed a girl down here.
That's the best reason to come down here. The best,
right.
I follow my wife anywhere, so I get it, man. That's cool. So it's neat. We've got a North Louisiana coach come down here to Southeast Louisiana, and after all the many years and many great players that have come through our program, we finally had the right guy for the job at the right time. So we're glad that girl brought you down here. Well, tell us about what life was like growing up in Monroe, because you mentioned the bayous. Obviously, look, we're talking, duck commander. It's wildlife heaven up there.
Mm-hmm.
But tell us what life was like, because I don't think a ton of people from this area get to make it up to Funroe, if you will.
Yeah.
And it would be nice to learn a little bit about it.
Funroe, that's right. It's a good. Monroe's a good place. Growing up, I did grow up. Went to school with a lot of the duck commander people. Jace and Jephthah was a couple years older than me. We used to play a little pickup ball here and there, and then just had a good experience growing up. Had good people around me. I got to go to one of the best schools in that area. Had good leaders that showed me the right way to live, good Christian leaders, and helped me become, I guess, it helped. They did their job and formed me to be a better person.
Yeah. Well, I know in addition to the very famous folks you mentioned that were your classmates and friends, that is definitely a sports hotbed, right? It's known as football, breeding ground extraordinaire. What's the basketball scene like up there? Because it feels like we know a lot about the football side of things, but I can't, think much about the basketball. I don't know much about it, I guess.
Well, West Monroe is right across the river, and you have to compete with the Rebels in football country. And OCS had a real
good Neville too, right? Isn't Neville up there? They won a few state championships back in the day.
Yeah, Neville's up there. Ouachita, Ruston, everybody's right there. OCS was a great football school. It still is. Coach Michael Harper and Coach Stephen Fitzy were up there when I was. I went back to coach a few years ago before I got to Ponchatoula.
Oh, cool.
And basketball is not their forte. We were pretty decent, I think, when I was coming up. I think we were pretty good. We thought we were better than what we were. And it's kind of the case.
Swagger, huh?
Yeah, we thought we were good. And then they have a great baseball school, and I think we won the two. I think through my freshman to senior year, we set records for most wins in the school at that point. And it was just a good place to grow up.
Yeah. Well, that's neat. It sounds like in many ways a lot like Ponchatoula these days. in that you had a thriving sports community. You went to a great school. I mean, that school's known for academics and just good people coming through it, good Christian values, etc. But that's neat. But you're also surrounded by wildlife, as we are, with Man Shack right there.
Oh, yeah.
You know, you don't get an alligator downtown if you don't have a lot of swamp action going. Were you into stuff like that coming up, hunting, fishing, etc.?
Not a lot of hunting.
Yeah.
I had a lot of friends who were, but we did a lot of fishing. I grew up right at the bayou, about 50 feet out my back porch. I'd walk out. We had a boat. You know, we had boat dock. We had pirogues. I'd swim in the bayou. We'd go try and catch anything that lived in the bayou. I don't know how we didn't get snake bit or get bitten by an alligator. And that was one of the things that I loved about coming down here to Ponchatoula is there is an alligator, or there was an alligator in the middle of downtown. And I said, man, I ain't got to even go outside. I can just roll down the street and see one.
Right.
And, it was nice.
Well, if you ever get homesick for gator, you know, you just got to go down to Man Shack, bring a flashlight after dark, and you'll see the eyes staring back at you. They're all over. So, folks, we're here with Coach Tom Taylor, the coach of the state championship PHS boys basketball team. And we've got our first comment coming through. Miss Patricia Vicknair. Miss Pat, how are you? What a sweet lady you are. It's so good to see you at church down at First Baptist and with your wonderful family. She says, Coach, that she is so glad you're here. And I know Miss Pat speaks for the community when she says that. In a bit, we're going to get into your career, and I ask you more kind of about how you arrived at Ponchatoula to coach. But before we get there, I want to ask you, you know, you've kind of alluded to several transitions here, moving from, you know, growing up on the bayou in Monroe, going to college at Millsaps, which is a wonderful small private school in Mississippi, and then, of course, ended up at Southeastern right up the street that we all know well. What was that like? I mean, what lessons did you learn along the way, shifting from small private schools to one of the largest universities in the state? You know, what was that experience like for you, Coach?
Well, I think you're put in the right place at the right time by divine intervention. You know, God puts you in where you need to be at the right spots. My parents chose to send me to a private school growing up, and then I got the opportunity to go to one my freshman year and prepared me academically. One prepared me for the other. And then coming to Southeastern, I think I got Southeastern at a good time. It was kind of before it really exploded into the big university we see today. It was still kind of a hometown feel. And it was the transitions were good. Any transition is rough at times, but I think my upbringing and the people around me helped me do the best I could with it.
That's neat. Well, let's talk about how your career took flight. Did you know early on you wanted to be a coach? Was this something that came to you later? You know, did you know what when you were at Southeastern, for example, what did you think you wanted to do?
Well, when I got down here when I came to Southeastern, I had a parent that I just knew, that I just met through some things, say, hey, you might be a good coach. And they said, okay. So my first position was at St. Thomas Aquinas with Errol Golf.
Coach Golf. Great man. Did you overlap any with Wesley Daniels when he was coaching with Coach Golf?
No, I think Wes maybe came a couple of years after me. I was there. I was there for a year, and Coach Golf introduced me to, and I kind of figured out I had a knack for it. And the more I did it, the more I figured out that I could touch lives, and I could be involved and help people and help kids, boys, girls, whoever, get to where they needed to be in life. And that was just the tools I was given.
Yeah, really neat. Well, you couldn't have started in a better place with a better man. Errol Goff's a local legend and just a great coach. I mean, a truly next level great coach. Speaking of great guys in the basketball world, we've got your PA announcer, Ellis Kelly III.
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, there you got it right there. Ellis, thank you for tuning in. You were one of my favorite guests yet. Your story, man, when you talk to Coach and he talks about coming down from Monroe, we think of that as being up north, but that's not up north. No. The mean streets of Detroit, where Ellis grew up, that's really a commute. But thank you for chiming in. Folks, as you can see here, we have the ability, if you're watching live, to put your comment on the screen. So if you got a question for Coach, or if you just want to say hi, like Ellis, or just, do anything, feel free to comment, say something nice, cheer on our coach and his team, because we're here with Coach Tom Taylor, coach of the state champion PHS Green Wave. So you talk about how you get into coaching with Coach Goff. What was the next step? Where did you coach next after St. Thomas?
This is a kind of a coincidental, but right place, right time. Up in Independence, there's a little school, Mater Della Rosa, and I thought I was ready to be in charge.
I know it well. I married an Independence girl,
Yeah,
and I remember watching my little brother when he was the point guard on the 8th grade team at St. Joseph. They battled Mater Della Rosa for the NIL championship that year. So, is that where you went, to Mater Della Rosa?
Well, I went there, and I think I was a baseball coach, and I was a basketball coach, and the athletic director, whatever that stood for. I think I got paid $900 my first year. And but one of the kids that I coached there, it was Ayla Gazzardo, who's at Southeastern now. Right. And man, look, that girl, and she could play, and she was a go-getter. She was a great kid to coach. Her family was awesome to me, really welcomed me, and kind of, they fed me pretty good. With the high hopes.
The Gazzardos are wonderful people.
Absolutely.
2 of my brothers and I worked for the Gazzardos all 4 years of high school. And they're just a great family, a big family. And they've done everything from public service in the state legislature to serving hi-ho barbecue and coaching ball and many things in between. But that's a great place to land, and what a great player you had in her. I think I noticed online the other day, like you, she's got a basketball camp coming up here soon. So folks are interested. We're going to talk about your camp later. Maybe folks can check hers out too. Well, how long did you stay up there in Independence with that team?
I was just there. I did that a year, and I figured that was not it was good. It was a great gig. It was just, it was not, small school, junior high. And I kind of had a little bit higher aspirations at the time. And from there, I got involved with Coach Billy Kennedy at Southeastern.
Okay. How did that come to be?
I worked their camp. Just Coach Goff got me hooked up working their camp and for the kids. And I worked it for a couple of years. And I told Coach Kennedy one time, Coach Prom actually at the time, and then I sat down with Coach Kennedy and said, look, I'd like to get serious about coaching and see what I could do. And they had some suggestions, and one of theirs was, hey, why don't you come help us out as a student assistant? And I stayed for 2 years as a student assistant and a graduate assistant.
So what'd you learn? I mean, that's a big leap, right? From middle school and Independence to major, university and basketball. What were the takeaways that you learned from that experience?
Those guys, the staff that Coach Kennedy had was phenomenal. Those guys all went on to great careers and are still coaching. Roman Banks is the athletic director at Southern. Coach Kennedy has been Texas A&M, different places. Coach Prom, Iowa State. And the thing I learned was how you run a program, how you have to be efficient, how you have to deal with the community. Player develop. I learned so many. I couldn't even list all the things that I learned under those guys. Yeah.
Well, it sounds like you've been blessed with some great mentors along the way, beginning in your own house growing up, but, certainly here locally with these names that you're mentioning are folks that are well known and well respected in our community. Speaking of well respected folks, my dad and mom's neighbor, Jerry Miller, great guy, a local business owner. He's chiming in, and himself a former PHS athlete.
That's right. Hey, Jerry.
Ahead of us in school. Jerry, thanks for checking in here. Of course, you and especially your wife a real big deal around the PHS basketball scene these days. So I'm sure you and Jerry have shared a spot on, if not on the buses, on the, eating out and whatnot as the team hit the road. Jerry, thank you for tuning in. Coach, after the 2 years working at Southeastern, where'd you go next? What was the next move in your career?
Well, Coach Prom came up to me and he told me he had a graduate assistant spot at Spring Hill or something for me in a dorm, $1,500 a year. And I said, I'm going to go make the big money and go be a teacher. I had a job waiting for me in St. Tammany.
Oh, wow.
And, and he went on to sign a $2.7 million contract or something. I probably should have thought about it, but, you get put in places for a reason.
Yeah.
I got coaching at Fontainebleau with a great guy, Barry Dotson. A lot of people don't know him, but he's probably one of the biggest underrated coaches in the last few years, especially there. He was at Brother Martin for some years.
Right.
He just knew basketball, and he held kids accountable, and he did not. You find people today that will sacrifice values and morals for victories, and he was not. He made kids toe the line, and I took that away from him to learn, hey, it's not worth sacrificing your ideals to make sure you get a win here or there. You hold people accountable, and good things will happen.
That's great to hear. And I hear great things about that school. One of the lawyers in my office, his wife teaches there, and she's always has for a decade or more. She's always singing the praises of Fontainebleau. And of course, we pick on each other when PHS plays them. When you guys put a whooping on them or the football team beats them, I'm always, quick to give them a hard time. But they love it over there. So you coached out there in St. Tammany. What did you teach? Did you go into PE or what was the? Because with coaching in the public school system, presumably you had to teach a full-time curriculum, right?
I did. I started teaching special education.
Oh,
I taught a special class that was for GED bound students. We took them. It was called Option 3, and it was the third out other than dropping out or graduating. We took them to like a Winn-Dixie. I had a Holiday Inn, and we would take them and teach them work skills.
That's great.
It wasn't what I thought I was going to do when I got teaching high school, but I learned so much from those kids and the values that you put on your day-to-day life, the things that you take for granted. Not everybody has those things. And I learned a lot about appreciation for, I'm 6'6" and I walk on 2 legs and I can get around just fine every day. And there's a lot of people out there that don't have those opportunities. And it seems so simple, but teaching some students like that really opened my eyes to how blessed I was at that time.
Yeah. That's a great message, and you're spot on. My wife is a school counselor, and now she's at the junior high, but she spent about a decade before that working in pupil appraisal in Livingston, working with special education kids. I'm blessed to serve as the president of TARP in Hammond with a ton of people with special needs, and you're so right about how rewarding it can be to work with those individuals because it puts your life and your own challenges in perspective. And I found it so much easier to face my day, after spending time with them. And that sounds like a really neat experience for you. And you see somebody with a lot of gratitude that you were able to walk that walk. That's really cool. Well, tell us about the next chapter. Where'd you go next?
Well, from there, I was just an assistant coach, and I had, Katrina came. That was my first year of real coaching and teaching employment. And so, I got kind of pushed back and we had to adjust. After 3 years as an assistant, I went to Picayune High School in Picayune, Mississippi. And I got to, the superintendent there was Dean Shaw. If you're in the basketball world, you know Dean Shaw. Dean Shaw won 600 games and coached some draft picks and a phenomenal basketball coach. And I got to work for 2 years as he was the superintendent. And wasn't the easiest place to be because I was a Louisiana boy in Mississippi.
Yeah.
But I learned a lot about what a program could be after seeing the foundation that he laid, and I learned about what a community can be when they support you.
Mm-hmm. Well, that sounds like a great experience. Again, we're seeing here, a great legendary presence like some of these other coaches you had worked with. To learn from. Where'd you go next?
Like I said, it was a little tough in Mississippi being from
right.
And then I got called back home. I had another baby on the way, and mom and dad said, "Hey, we'd like to have you nearby." And I just picked up the phone to call.
And you heard free babysitter. Count me in.
Exactly. They called. I called my former. He was Michael Harper. He was the football coach at Washita Christian when I was coming up, and he was the headmaster now. And I called and I said, "Coach, I need some help getting a job up in Monroe," and he offered me a job right there.
Mm-hmm.
And it really, you don't leave one job until you have another one in hand. And I was okay, it was that easy. And I moved back up to Monroe and got to spend 3 great years near my family with raising my babies and you know uh, figuring things out at that point as a young family. From Washita, and Washita, not a good basketball situation. I'll be honest.
Yeah.
It was tough, but we had fun. I had one of my best friends, Rob Garlington. He's a coach up in Monroe at River Oaks now, and he was my assistant. And it was one of those things that if you didn't laugh, you'd cry. But he helped me get through some tough times on the basketball floor. And but I got a chance to put my son in a private school for a few years, and taught him some good values, made some good friends. I got to I taught Sadie Robertson, John Luke Robertson, all those.
Wow,
I would, I'd get we cut up in class, and
that's neat.
they're great kids, great families.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Well, and you got to bring your family back. I'm getting the sense that you come from a good household. Your mom and dad are eager to bring you back and help you. If we can, let's shift gears a little bit and take a quick break. We'll get back to your coaching career, but let's talk about the important people in your life, beginning with your parents, and then tell us a little bit about the family you've created with your own wife and kids.
Well, my parents, Tom and Monica, are far from. My mom was from Germany, and she was born in post-World War II Germany in 1945.
Whoa.
And so she grew up with a difficult type of background.
I bet.
And so that, you project what you grew up with onto your children.
Sure.
And she's very thrifty person.
Yeah.
Very appreciative of things that other nice things that may not seem nice to other people. She appreciated those little things. My dad was a very I guess a do-it-all kind of person. He built houses. He worked for Boeing, building tools that created airplanes, all sorts of handyman skills. And I do a side business with my handyman stuff, and I learned a lot from him and how to appreciate things. They worked hard to get us, to get things that we needed. We didn't have anything too much. But they provided what they needed to provide.
Well, let's take a quick minute. This will be our commercial break, if you will. I'd like to plug your handyman service and hear more.
There you go. Okay.
Because we want to support our coach, right? If we want to keep our state champion coach around here with the income and things you need, and I think it's such a neat story that you take that skill from your dad, you learn from him, and now you're carrying on that legacy. So if you would share with us your handyman business, tell us what you do, how we can contact you, what kind of work, because that's something people need all the time, right?
Right.
So tell us about that, please.
Back in the day, one of my former players, we were talking about nicknames, and I joked around and I said they call me T Money, and it's kind of stuck with some kids. And so I was trying to come up with. I always kind of dabbled, trying to pick up some side jobs and my little side hustle with the handyman stuff. And I turned. I looked at my wife and said, "What's the name of this thing?" And she said, "It's called T Money Services." And so we started T Money Services. And after basketball season, I stayed busy. I do a lot of things. I do things from bathroom remodel. I've done a bathroom remodel to hanging blinds, fixing faucets. I mean, just any little thing that people need. I do a lot of work with people around the community, and it's actually gotten to where it's actually a pretty good little side hustle.
Yeah, that's cool. Well, how can we contact T Money? I'll have my producer, if she can, put it in the comments down below. If you want to give us a phone number or whatever.
I have a Facebook page, T Money Services. And, just my phone number, 985-662-8040. Did I go too fast?
No. Well, please repeat the number just in case I talk and mess that up.
985-662-8040. And if I can't do it, I tell people, and I try not to. I try to be fair with everything I do, and I try and get the best quality, because I'm one of those people that if I pay for it, I want something done right.
Yeah.
And we just, it's kind of a family thing. I bring my son along with me on some jobs, and
Very cool.
It's a good little side business.
Yeah. Well, I love that. And you know what's neat about hiring you? I mean, we've seen so many. I mean, look, with being a hurricane town like we are, with hurricanes, floods, etc., virtually everybody around here has had some kind of construction need in recent years. And some folks have been really taken advantage of with fly-by-night operations that come in and out of town and kind of prey upon, especially elderly folks when they're at their biggest need. So in you, we've got kind of a trusted community icon where it's like, hey, I know where Coach Taylor's going to be at least come season time, right?
Right. Yeah.
We can trust him to honor his word, do it right, and because he can't hide from us, right? He's a 6'6" guy whose team schedule is posted publicly.
Yeah. That's what I tell people. I say you're going to be able to find me.
Yeah, well, it's kind of like me with my law practice, right? I mean, I'm too scared to do anybody wrong because I can't get away from you. I'm on the corner.
That's right. That's
my brother's got to run for office every 4 years. We better treat people right, or else it'll come back to us.
That's
and
right.
I can see here our show's producer, Daniel and Dennis, has put a link here: T-Money Handyman Services LLC. So, folks, please check that out. You can go check out the Facebook page. Coach shared his number. I'm sure the number's also listed there. That's neat that you're doing that and that you're bringing your son into it. So let's talk about your son, your two beautiful daughters that I saw you playing tennis with a few weeks ago at JC Park. So you mentioned your parents. Great story there. What about the family that you've raised up, with your wife?
Well, my wife, Alicia, hey, baby, she's such a patient woman, and she has to be, because if anybody's married to a coach, they know that the coach wife life it's probably tougher than the coach life, because
amen,
you have to deal with us when we come home. And my whole family is awesome. They support me. My son Mason is a senior this year. He's a great young man. He's never gets in trouble so far, as far as I know.
I'm knocking on wood. If you hear that noise,
thank you. He's taking some college credit classes, and he's doing well. He's at actually I think he's getting his senior photos done right now. So,
oh, cool.
But he's taking some college classes through our dual enrollment at Ponchatoula High. And I try and tell every senior, if you're going to go to college, take the dual enrollment, because it saves you money. It's free.
That's a great point. I've got an attorney here on my team named Stephanie Stafford that I've known since she came to work for me in high school. And she was able to finish college in like 2.5 years, maybe 2 years, because of that program. So you're right. I mean, that's a lot of money to save. And, my wife did that when she was in Independence. Just a great program. But I don't think a lot of people know about it, because old fogies like me didn't have that opportunity when we were at PHS. So I'm glad you're sharing that. So, yeah, you make a good point about how tough it is being the coach's wife. I can kind of relate, because my dad was a politician. He was a sheriff. He had to run for office every 4 years. And I saw that being in many ways tougher on my mom than it was on him, because, not only do they have to, like you say, deal with them when they come back from a long day, but you're also muzzled to an extent, I think, when you're the wife of the coach, right? So if she's going to stand watching you, and some idiot that doesn't know anything about X's and O's is up there yakking, she can't just turn around and settle it and, tell the guy off and set him straight, or maybe she can. I don't know. But it just seems to me like a very challenging role. And I'm glad you gave her that due.
Yeah, she's learned to. She kind of sits up away from people up in the top.
Yeah.
Some coaches' wives are right there, right behind the bench, giving the referees, a good earful. But she figured out that if you're engaged, if you start to engage with the people, because for every person that's in the stands, that's a different opinion than what I'm doing at the exact moment.
Yeah.
Whether I'm right or wrong, it's the different opinion, and she's learned that she can't fight all those battles. Right. It's like trying to stop a river.
Well, it's funny, but high school sports and politics, the two things that everybody considers themselves the expert on. I think through the great season we had recently in PHS football, and, you can hear these yahoos in the stand like, oh, Coach Hank should have run, or Coach Hank should have. Yeah. And it's like, man, Coach Hank's got 300 wins. You can't possibly know a thousandth of what he knows about football. But everybody, whether they played, coached, or not, thinks they're an expert. So your lovely wife is watching. Alicia, I see
Hey.
a comment there. And of course, she says she loves you and she's so proud of you. And thank you for tuning in, for watching our show. And thank you on behalf of our little community for sharing your family and especially your husband with us, because we wouldn't be the state champs if you and your two daughters and son weren't so giving to share Coach with us. Another great comment coming in from another community icon who was on the show maybe a year or more ago, Papa Square. Thank you for sharing your congratulations. And you're right; these are great coaches, staff, and players, and led by the White Shadow. Tell me about the White Shadow. That's new to me.
He gave me that nickname, I guess, before he left Ponchatoula High. That's one of the great, the great James Square.
Oh, yeah.
He's an awesome guy.
Absolutely.
I cannot say enough good things about him and how he's guided me through some situations dealing with kids. He knows. If people don't know about what he was doing for the band in Ponchatoula High, they need to find out, because he was awesome.
Yeah,
he is awesome, still is.
A wonderful man and such a great example and mentor. I mean, I'm blessed to know a little about him, or have for a long time, because he's best friends with my mentor, Danny Williams. But we got to interview him here on the show. So, folks, if you want to learn more about Papa Square, as Mary Beth Corvetto would call him, Mr. Square, he just shared a tremendous story with us. And you can go in the links of the show and see his interview or anybody else's, but it was really dynamic and interesting. So circling back to Coach Tom Taylor, we've been asking a lot of questions. You know, he's shared with us family history, coaching history, and I think we were at the point in the story, Coach, where you had returned home to your roots in Ouachita, coaching at Ouachita Christian. Eventually, we're going to find our way to Ponchatoula. And I don't know if there's another stop in between.
No, we're coming to Ponchatoula now.
Okay, tell us about how that came to be.
Well, so private school salary wasn't getting it done in Monroe, and I said, you know what? I know a lot of people down south. That's where I kind of cut my teeth. I said I need to start trying to get back there and build my resume and use my connections to get a job. And look, I interviewed everywhere, just trying to get back down here. And I came down to meet with Mr. Strickland, and I think the school was under lockdown that day. We had an incident in town, and I didn't know at the time. And so I did my first interview with Mr. Strickland in his truck, driving around, locking down campus.
Oh, wow.
But I used that. I said, this is Tom Taylor, your lockdown candidate.
Oh, nice.
And at the same time, Coach, I put my name in for boys or girls. I didn't have a clue that what was going on in the parish. And Coach Landash was up for the girls' position, and it was getting to be the end of July. And Mr. Strickland calls me and says, Tom, well, I don't know if we're going to be able to make it work. We're there in court for whatever reason. And I said, well, what's hold up? He goes, well, you want to be. Your name's in the girls' coach. I said, well, if that's the difference, take my name out. I'll just be the boys' coach. And he called me back 5 minutes later and says, hey, you're the coach. I said, all right.
What a blessing, because, of course, she's been a perfect fit there.
Oh,
and here you are, same thing with the boys. Y'all make such a great tandem. So that's great. I see, and circling back to Mr. Square, Danny Lynn's put a link there. Danny Lynn, if you would, put a link to Coach Landash's interview, too, because she had a great spot on the show. So that's really neat. So it's kind of cool, and look, Coach Strickland is one of those guys, or Mr. Strickland, by the time you got here, that's another kind of iconic Ponchatoula figure.
Absolutely.
For the older guys in the group, we remember him as our free enterprise teacher who taught us how to do our taxes. So when I was working at Hi-Ho for the Gazzardo family, who you mentioned earlier, Coach Strickland was the guy teaching me how to, fill out the 1040 EZ form. Right. He goes on, of course, to be the principal, and then lots of folks remember him from that and being the booming voice on the microphone. But like you, he was, he's got an athletic background. He came down here to play football, and believe it or not, he was recruited by Bear Bryant to play in Alabama. But that's really neat. So you get to Ponchatoula, Coach Strickland hires you. What's your first impression? Because you've kind of mentioned a long coaching history from little bitty schools like Mater Della Rosa to bigger time programs, 2 states really, right? So What did you think when you got here, when you kind of got in the gym, got in the school, and kind of started to see what things were like, what were some first impressions?
Well, before we started, you were talking about my come to Ponchatoula story.
Yeah,
And
tell us
one of my introductions, I think it was Mr. Darren Bennett, Bennett's Towing.
Right, right.
He looked at me and he said, "You a come here or a from here?" And I said, I'm a come here as fast as I could, sir."
Yeah,
I said,
that's pure Darren. His dad, Mr. Sonny, and my dad were buddies in high school. I think they were football teammates at PHS in the 50s and 60s. And he's about as Ponchatoula high as it gets.
"Oh, he is.
That's how he speaks. That's great. That's wonderful.
That kind of introduced me to well, I might need to make sure I'm checking some boxes and making sure I'm meeting the right people.
Yeah.
My first impression, Ponchatoula was a huge school. I didn't go to a big school, I think it was 1,700 kids when I started, and the program itself didn't have a level of respect. It had some turnover in coaches over the previous years, and the players had kind of run the show, and just people didn't give us kind of the time of day.
Yeah. No, yeah, it had been a long time since Coach Steve Grigas roamed those sidelines and kind of engendered, respect from all corners. So that's
Right.
Yeah, you were able to bring that back. Is that something that is a long grind to get back from there to where you are, or were you able to make kind of an instant change in the culture?
Well, my first pregame speech I ever told the guys was, I said, "Y'all play hard, I'm gonna coach hard. That's all I can promise." And I kind of outlined some things that I think are very important to a program. Your character is a big part of your culture, and culture is the big buzzword, but it's one of the biggest things that makes a winning team is what are you doing outside the lines? And one of the quotes I use is, "Who's leading your locker room?" So it comes down to putting the right kids in the right spot and giving them the opportunities to be successful outside of the court. But it comes through a process of buying in, and parents have to buy in. Kids have to see that there's success. You kind of got to trick them a little bit to get them to believe that you know what you're talking about.
Right.
And
a little fake it till you make it.
you got to, and eventually, I think the right people come to the right spot, and you can't make everybody happy.
Of course.
In coaching, not everybody agrees with you, and the second you try to please everybody, you end up failing. So we picked a few things to be good at and a few things to make sure. Like, I didn't want to have anybody be ineligible because of grades.
So let's talk about what those few things you picked were. What were the priorities that you settled on? Because I'm a big believer, you can do anything, but you can't do everything. So if we just went through the list of buzzwords and said, here are 10 great things a team would have, you can't focus on 10 things. The nature of focus is you have to pick a few. So what did you pick?
Well, one of the things is a student athlete, you got to be a good student. And so I said, making a 1.5 is what the state says you have to make. I said, that's good, but we want to do better. And I tell guys all the time that if you're a competitor and you're serious about success, it's not just in one aspect. You are a serious person in every aspect. You are a competitor. You want to win in all those aspects. So academically, I need to see improvement. Physically, I need to see improvement. So the academics was the first thing that we really talked about, was getting guys eligible and keeping guys and the work ethic. The second thing was their amount of respect that they treated people with and that they would treat their teachers with. Mr. Strickland, one of his famous quotes was, "Right is right and wrong is wrong." And I gave that to my players, like, we're going to do things the right way. And if I believe winning will come because we're pushing the right values. So it was academics, and then respect towards, the teachers, the classmates, the community in general. And then we focused on basketball.
Yeah, that's great. And I love, you mentioned earlier the focus on character. And what I love hearing that is, last week we had Ben Parent on the program, and I've known him my whole life. He coaches St. Joe. He's won championships there. And that's what he was talking about, character and that foundation. And there's a lot of similarities I hear here. And I love to hear that because it lets me know there can be some continuity between, his players and then some may become your players one day. But you also mentioned the need to get buy-in from the parents. And, I have it, getting the right kids in the right places. And let's start with your MVP, Alan Graves, the only guy I know who's taller than you.
Yeah.
But, I have a bird's eye view into that kid, that young man, and his family because his father's a dear friend of mine. We coached way back in the day, once upon a time, when his older brother, the SEC champion, Little Marshall Graves, as they call him, again, little to some, but not to me. I'm looking up at him. I think he's 6'3", 6'4". But we coached against each other, Marshall and I, in Biddy ball. And then eventually, he would stop coaching baseball because he did that too, to focus on basketball. And he asked me to coach Little Marshall. And long story short, in Allen, you have the third great Graves basketball player, right? The oldest brother is a state champ and an SEC champ. Amara was the first, I think, girl to score 2,000 points at PHS, and she's at Auburn now. But you also have a family that is intensely focused on academics. People focus on Marshall and the basketball and forget about Amy and the education. And she's got all this training and master's degree. And those kids are ace students too. So my question, I guess, is kind of, starting with him. How do you get them to buy in? Because they have options and can go wherever they want. I mean, Amara played because Coach Landesh is so great. And if it was a no-brainer to have her stay here in Ponchatoula and play there with a great group of girls. But, Little Marshall played at U High in Baton Rouge. So, how do you convince players like that have options to make PHS the choice? And, of course, he's not the only one, Parents can go a lot of different places. So how do you get players to put their trust in you and what y'all were trying to create?
Well, Alan didn't. He went to U High his freshman year, and I knew coming out of Champ Cooper they had a heck of a squad. A lot of those guys on my team now played for Coach Gellner at Champ Cooper, and Alan went to U High, and I kind of expected that because his brother went there and had a stellar career, and Coach Joe Spencer over there is a phenomenal coach. It's a great school. And so, I kind of didn't think anything about Alan coming to Ponchatoula. And one day, Coach Landesh says, hey, Amy and Marshall are going to enroll Alan, and would you think you'd want him to play for you? And we talked, and I'm like, yeah, I'll talk to him, and then she goes, oh, he's 6'8". I said, that's what you should have opened with. That's how you start the
Talk about bury the lead, Coach.
I know. And so, I talked to him after the state championship game, and I thanked Amy and Marshall I said, thank you for trusting me and my program with your son, because he could have gone anywhere.
Yeah.
And I firmly believe that the foundation and the stability that we've created over the last 8 or 9 years prior to this year was one of their deciding factors that, it's I'm here to stay as a coach. I'm building something that is bigger than me and bigger than, it's bigger than the individual stuff. It's a team, it's community, and the values that we hold or reflect their values. And so I think at the end of the day, they could see what was going on, and they knew that, hey, this is a spot that we don't have to drive to Baton Rouge. We don't have to live over there. We don't have to move our, we can enjoy, and he can be around his friends, and they're a great family. And then Alan's a great student athlete. He's a good kid. He's a nice guy. He's still a big kid. But,
he is. It's hard for people to realize that sometimes because we've been looking up to him for so long, right? But you're right. He is still a kid. He's got another year of high school to go.
Right.
And he's a great one. It's funny. I was speaking to our local Kiwanis club a couple of weeks ago about this little Bikes for Kids program I have, and it had a slideshow, and I included a slide of long time ago Alan Graves as the great kid winning a bike, because for me, as you're 6'6", I'm 5'6". It was the only time in my life I was taller than Alan Graves. So it was nice right after y'all won the championship and he won the MVP for me to kind of have proof I used to be taller than
there you go.
gentle giant there. But And hey, I want to share this with you, Coach. So my dear friend Don McClure, Don, hey, thanks for checking in. He says, "What's up, Louisiana?" Don and his family live across the world. They move every month or so from place to place, and so you've got a European connection here watching you, Coach. Don's
Hey, Don.
from Houston, and he's a lawyer who still practices law back there, but he does it remotely from across the world. So, Don, thanks for tuning in. So, Coach, folks, as you can see here, we're still with Coach Coach Taylor, and we're talking about how he gets parents to buy in. Let me ask you this, Coach: what is some advice you give to your players as you're trying to mold that character, as you're trying to focus them on academics and teach the things you've been talking about? How do you reach those youngsters like Alan, and what's the advice you give them?
Well, today's a lot of people say kids have changed, and I think the things that kids can be involved in has changed a lot. We have a lot of more distractions. I had a Nintendo, the original Nintendo. I try and tell you, they said, "Oh, a Super Nintendo." No, I had a Nintendo. Okay.
Oh yeah.
It was one thing, and then you went outside and played. We didn't have the internet. We had a phone at home, and you went outside and played till the street lights came on. And so now we have a lot more distractions between cell phones and everything else. And so to get the kids to ultimately buy in and do it, I try to give them a little bit of an old school feel that this is a priority right now. And we try to teach them how to prioritize things and put their schoolwork ahead of things. And one of the big pieces of advice that one of my longtime assistants, Eulin Thorne, he's a great guy, and he's helped me. I call him my human resources. He helps me communicate to a lot of people that maybe it might come off as a little rough sometimes.
Yeah.
But we talk about the average of you is the 5 people you hang around.
Great point.
So we talk to them, say, who's in your circle? Are people that are doing things that they don't need to do, or are they cutting class? Are they not doing assignments? Are they doing worse? And it can even be to social media, to the apps you use on your phone. I say, who are the 5 things? What are the 5 things that are influencing you? And we talk about that a lot, and try to get those kids to understand, if you want to be a winner, you got to hang around winners. If you sit around 5 millionaires, you might be the 6th one because you're learning.
Yeah.
And I think that as the kids kind of see that they hang out with each other and that they all have the same mindset of success, it kind of builds on itself.
Yeah, and that's a great point. It's it's just like the old saying people say, you lay down with dogs, you're going to catch fleas.
Right.
Whether you're talking about the 5 people around you being good or bad, the principle you just described is at play. Don McClure says he's in Texas today. Don, that must mean that your son Nathan is taking the ACT. I know I saw you a while back saying you'd have to come back in state for that. But Don also says here that you're a great coach and a great mentor, and he wishes all kids had the 5 kids concept. Speaking of great guys, Corey Jackson is on here, one of the finest players to ever lace it up at PHS, the single best talent I ever coached. And Corey, you say great coach. Look, I know you think I was a great coach in Biddy Ball, but this is about Coach Taylor today, right? So you don't need to write about me. Of course, I'm kidding, folks. We're talking about Coach Taylor here. But I do like to have a lot of fun with Corey. He's a great guy. His beautiful little girl's in the same 1st grade class over at St. Joseph with my little boy. And, of course, both of his boys are great ball players. And now one of them is a state champion. So, Corey, I could see you having a little fun with us here. So Corey and his brilliant attorney wife, obviously parents you deal with a lot, Coach. What would a day in the life be like as a basketball coach? Because I think we see you on the sidelines for the games, right? And just like most folks, we don't have the capacity always to realize all you've got going home, like the fact that you got your own 3 kids to raise, your own wife who needs your love and attention, the need to get out there with a second job, in the off season and make more money, even though you got to recruit and do camps and tournaments and all. So, if people ask you, what's a day in the life of a coach like, what would your response be to a question like that?
We joke sometimes because some people in the education world, they say, I want to have a coach's schedule. And I'll say, I'll trade with you any day. You take a day of January and I'll take any day you pick.
Right.
On a busy day, a normal day, we get to school and we got to be in the classroom, teaching or doing whatever, have to do that day in the classroom. And then you get to the planning period of the off time, and that's usually done with, if it's in season, we're doing film or anything from film to laundry. And then, breaking down the next practice and preparing for that. And then by the time it gets all said and done, you're finally getting to what you planned for, which is your practice or your game. But then, you throw in things like Coach Landash and I share a bus route. So she drives mornings and I drive the afternoons. Sometimes we swapped, and so you're up at 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning getting ready. And then you're in late, and then you're home at 11 and after a game, and then you do it again, and then you do it again, and you keep going. I can't hear you.
I'm sorry, Coach.
There you go.
Somehow got muted there. But I was saying, speaking of great coach/bus drivers, the great Marshall Graves, the senior, is on here to say that you're a great guy for our community. Hey, Marshall. Again, a great interview, and his son's interview where he talks about playing ball with Michael Jordan, incredible too. Danny Lynn, I don't know if you're still around, but it'd be great to get links to those in the notes. But that's I'm glad that you give us a view into that part of life, Coach, because you're right. There is that misconception that coach is kind of maybe a cush job, and it's not. If you're doing it right, it is not anything close to that. And people sometimes say, "Oh, well, coaches get a little stipend, they get a little extra pay," and it's like, "Whoa, have you ever done the math on how much per hour that is? Because I'm pretty sure it's way below minimum wage by the time."
It's not even third world country wage.
Right. Well, let me ask you this. You mentioned earlier, Coach Gildner and the Champ Cooper program, great coach out there, dear friend of mine, one of my little brother's best buddies, and I know you had Danny Dunn come up from the junior high to now be on your staff. So clearly you have kind of a gift for mentoring younger coaches. You mentioned Coach Thorne, et cetera. But if you were to share advice with a young person who's thinking about going into coaching, who wants to be a great coach like you or Coach Landash, whether it's at the championship level or just at the impacting young men and women's lives level, what advice would you give to an aspiring young coach?
I'm going to go back into some advice that somebody gave me. Charlie Domino, the AAU coach on the South Shore. I used to coach at Ponchatoula, girls AAU team back in the day, the Ponchatoula Heat. And when they first started, I was their first coach. And we were at a tournament, and Coach Domino pulls me aside, and we're talking about career and kind of the direction that I was thinking about. And he said, he goes, "Tom, I'm going to tell you, get at a community school." He said, "Find a school where you are the coach and there's no competition for, people leaving and going places. There's no recruiting like there is in New Orleans where, they're trying to shop their kid around."
Right.
He goes, "Get to a community school because if you do it right, they will support you and they will lift you up and they will take care of you." And I tell you what, the more I'm at Ponchatoula, the longer as long as I've been here, I've realized that we got one of the best I call it the best little big town anywhere. And
that's a cool way to put it. Yeah.
And people support when you do things right, and you lift the community up and you put the values that everybody shares ahead of the ultimate outcome, which is, we want to win. But when you put those things out there as a coach, I think that you reap more rewards. And if I could, as a young coach, you want the limelight, but I think if you go to the community route, it helps a whole lot.
Yeah. And you're right. It's just such a great community. I think of like your parade. Y'all win the championship, parade down Main Street. And I went and watched the parade. We started in front of First Baptist Church and kind of made our way to the donut shop and then across the street to the laundromat. And there was a beautiful little scene there that's indicative of the community you described, where we had kind of these mixture of folks that didn't arrive together, right? Kind of the old white folks at First Baptist and the young African-American mama with a bunch of little babies. And like this really nice old guy, just without like no thing to it, he's like, I'm gonna help these little kids who are following their mom, like the Five Little Ducks song, help these little bitty kids get across the street, you know? And it's just like, that's kind of Ponchatoula in a nutshell. Clearly they didn't know each other. It was just kind of different, but it's like, hey man, this is Ponchatoula. We got this little community. We're all out here to cheer the team on. And it was a really tender little moment. And it's cool because your team and your parade, that's what brought us all together to create that little moment of magic. So before we get out of here, because I know I promised I'd get you out of here by 6, I got 7 minutes to go. Let's talk about the reason people are watching, besides hearing your story. And it's certainly not to hear me talk. Let's talk about the state championship and the ride up to it. You know, what comes to mind when you think about this historic season that you've just finished?
Man, I've been telling this to everybody, and I've had some people kind of look at me sideways because they want a great basketball answer. And I tell everybody I was just lucky enough to get to coach these guys. And really, they are a tight group of guys. They love each other. And when I say they love each other, they're still teenage boys. They're gonna, you know, they get at each other. They get on each other's nerves, but
they love each other like brothers love each other.
Exactly.
Lots of drama.
Yeah, there is, but you know, they all had the same mindset. And right. I told them early in the year we were going to set a goal, and I said, I'm not setting it. You're setting it. And they picked state championship. I said, okay, that means that I'm going to coach you the best of my knowledge to get you to the state championship. So every time they'd slack or they kind of take a day off, I'd say, is this what you want? Because you said state championship. Now who's going to be right? Who's going to be wrong? And they would build each other up, and they would, if I was giving them to them that day, they would support each other. And they get along so well. And when the chemistry's there, and when you like each other and you enjoy playing with each other, and then you love each other and want to see success, great things happen. Yeah.
Well, that's well said and 100% true. What do you think the future holds for you, your team? You know, what do we have to look forward to?
Well, you know, we got a big off season coming up. We have our, we talked about the camp earlier.
Yeah, let's talk about the camp. The camp is in May after Memorial Day. Is that right?
Yes. We've had this is my, I want to say probably my 9th year in a row. I've been here 10 years. This is my 9th year doing the camp. We do the Tuesday after Memorial Day. We go 4 days, 9 to 12. And it's not a per se hardcore basketball camp, but it's a great introduction for kids who want to learn to play the game the right way, and it's a great way to get kids socialized. I have so many kids, parents who come up and they say he's never been to camp, or a young lady say she's so nervous, she's never been around it. I said give me a couple hours. And I kind of brainwash them into yelling chants with me, and the players are involved, and they end up loving it. And I've had several players come through camp and actually come play for me.
That's cool.
You know, it's a good little thing. It runs 2 weeks right after school gets out.
So it sounds to me, Coach, like it's a camp that targets a broader community. I mean, it's great when a player who's got the capacity to play for you comes through, you know, a Corey Jackson or Alan Graves type, great. But you're targeting other kids maybe with, you know, a lower skill set or lower basketball knowledge. Is that right? I mean, are you opening it up to kids of kind of all talent levels?
Yeah, I am. I don't. You don't have to be a good player to come to camp. That's what camps are for. Camps are there. I mean, you know, a lot of times the kid will figure out like, ooh, I do like this. And I have parents say that he never had a basketball. I give him a basketball at the end of the week, and they say he doesn't put it down now. And that's cool. That's awesome. That's great for me, and great as a community and as a coach. But it's there to get the kids involved. It raises a little bit of money for the basketball team, and it's a good thing. And I get to see kids grow up. And I came to your camp, and I'm like, I don't think I'm that old, but okay.
Hey, wait till I'm going to tell you. So we show up for one of your games this season, but before the big playoff run. And I bring my son. You may recall we brought our whole biddy ball team. Marshall,
that's right.
Coach Lindsey Stogner and I. And y'all were great, by the way. I can't thank you enough. You let the kids on the floor. they got autographs from you
Yeah.
and the players and even the cheerleaders and managers and whatnot. But at the opening, Ellis Kelly, who commented earlier, the great PA announcer, he's throwing through the players, and he rings up Corey Jackson. And I look at my little first grader, and I'm like, yeah, I coached that guy's dad. And he's like, man, Dad, you're old. And it was a bit of a surreal moment. But, yeah, so I can feel your pain, Coach.
Right.
When your former campers grow up on you. Wait till you're my age and they have kids who are playing.
Oh, my goodness.
But so we ask about the future. Marshall says the future is another state championship. I like that optimism.
Right.
Go ahead, Coach.
I said, well, that's the goal. Again, I'm not going to set it. They're going to set it, and I know what they're going. I know what they're going to say. They're going to say, "Coach, we want to win another one." I'm going to say, "Well, I don't. I had to figure out how to win the first one, so I'm going to have to figure out how to win the second one."
Well, you've proven you can. You've proven you can coach it, and they've proven they can play it, and it's neat. I think they were probably tired of seeing those girls play for state championships, and of course, your boys did a great job supporting their female counterparts, but they were ready to join the party, and I'm so glad they did. Speaking of the camp, Danny Lynn has put a link here. So, folks, if you go to the comments here, you can get a link and sign up or learn about the basketball camp. And then Don makes a wonderful comment here, Coach, that it's so humble that you would attribute your success to luck as you did. Henry Ford, who he quotes here, said, luck is where hard work meets opportunity. And that's clearly what happened here. I mean, you're right. God, as you mentioned earlier, puts the right people in the right places at the right time. And God is the one who put Alan Graves and all these other great players you had on your team and put you in a position to coach them. But they would not have won if you and they had not worked so hard and busted your tails in the many hours that none of us saw. So I thank you for that. Marshall, I'll let you get the last quote in here on comment. You said our boys have a great relationship on and off the court.
They do.
And I'm tickled to hear that. And it's because of great parents like you and Amy, Marshall, and great coaches like Coach Tom. So, Coach, we are hitting the 6 o'clock mark. I just have a final question. Is there anything else on your mind, on your heart, anything at all you'd like to share with us that we didn't cover?
Man, I just, it's one of those things where I could talk about people that were important, and my coaching staff. I couldn't have done it. I've never had a full staff. I had 4 assistant coaches this year, and well, I think we had a heck of a relationship and learning how to deal with each other, and I think that kind of showed our bond, that we learned how to get along, showed the players that it can work, and then it just fed so well. But I want to thank those guys. I want to thank our staff, our administration, our teachers that support, and Ponchatoula in general. Everybody here that supported us. I cannot thank everybody enough. I'm happy to be a part of our community, and I'm looking forward to another good run after I catch up on a little rest.
Well, get some rest. You've earned it, and I thank you on behalf of our little community here. We are so blessed to have you at the helm, and not just because you won a championship and brought that great honor to the town, but because you are helping turn boys into men and instilling values into them that's really going to continue to make this a great place to live. So thank you for that, Coach. To our listeners, to the many of you that commented, thank you for tuning in. We'll be back here next week at the same time. And to Coach Taylor, we say thanks and go get that rest that you've deserved.